Alright, welcome to another episode of Plot Points. I have probably recorded this video at least 3 times now, but I've had some difficulty trying to upload it to YouTube due to the size and length of the video. But today I wanted to talk about my ideas for a live-action Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z film. Now, we haven't really gotten a lot of good Dragon Ball Z or Dragon Ball films that were live-action. Actually, we haven't gotten any Dragon Ball Z films that were live action. We've gotten some great fan films that have been released, but overall, we've been stuck with either the older Japanese film of Dragon Ball that I've never seen, never really wanted to see, or the more recent Dragon Ball film that came out several years ago that also wasn't that great as well. The biggest issue seems that studios don't really know how to adapt this series into a live action medium that appeals to both fans and new audience members alike. I think in part because you have such a rich history with such a strong fan base that it's hard to take one little piece and adapt it into something that works on the whole for multiple people. Now, my idea hopefully will solve that issue because I feel that's the real issue. It's not the material as much as being able to take pieces of the material out, adapt it for your audience, and then appease both fans and hopefully attract new audience members so you can make some money. Now, my idea with Dragon Ball starts very plainly with the last story part in the Dragon Ball manga. Now, what I'm talking about simply is that we have one more World's Strongest Tournament, and that's where I think the story should start. Now, I think the story should start, honestly, at the very first meeting between Grandpa Gohan and Goku. And it should show their interaction with each other. It should show an introduction to the 4-star Dragon Ball, if possible. And then from there, it should move forward several years into the future where we have a grown-up Goku at the World's Strongest Tournament going to meet his friends and register for the tournament. Now, this is where you would be introduced to each one of our characters, such as Krillin, maybe Yamcha, Bulma, Tien, etc. And of course Master Roshi, not to forget. But you introduce each one of these characters, and in so doing also introduce the audience members to this world. Now, the Dragon Ball world is not a play on Earth. It's its own universe, and as a result you have animal-human hybrids walking around. You have a whole mixture of rich cultural history thrown into this universe. And so I think that should be kept in. It would be difficult, but if you introduce it the right way, I think it'd be okay and accepting of the public. Now, you could eliminate some of these pieces, but in doing so, I think you're going to take away a lot of the charm of the series. And that's why I love the series. I mean, the series as a whole appeals to both young and older fans, and I think that's what makes Dragon Ball as a whole great. I started with Dragon Ball Z. The Tree of Might was what I first saw, that animated movie. And from there, I became obsessed with Dragon Ball Z. I believe I was in middle school at the time, and I tried to eat up everything I could find, from the TV show to the comics that were adaptations, of course, of the manga. And then from there, I had action figures and model kits, and you name it, I had it. Video games. I became a huge fan of the series that has stayed with me as I've gotten to adulthood. And even now, I'm very excited with the new movies they've been releasing, and I'm eager to see what they've done with Dragon Ball Super when I have a chance to watch the anime series they've been adapting. But at one point in my life, I started reading Dragon Ball as a way to get through a hard time. And it was reading these great stories with characters that were both relatable and funny, and very much brought me back to what I loved about the original Dragon Ball Z, and even further back to the childlike innocence that I enjoyed about the series and the characters. So I think that's what the series needs to start with. It needs to start with the humorous interaction between Grandpa Gohan and Goku meeting for the first time. Goku, of course, should be coming out of his pod and trying to destroy things, and then Grandpa Gohan watches as he falls and injures himself, only to wake up without any memory of anything else than being the Goku that we know today. Jump ahead several years, and that's where you have him meeting his friends at the World's Strongest Tournament. Now, from this point, I think flashbacks would help fill people in on who these characters are. I mean, you have to care about these characters. And it's these little flashbacks that show their meetings between children and show their meetings between adulthood that I think are going to really balance out the story. And again, this is a rich story. You can't tell this in an hour and a half, and you shouldn't try to. Give it 2 hours, give it maybe 2 hours and 20 minutes, 2 hours and 30 minutes, but give it that story time so that you can develop each one of these characters properly so that the fans will feel like they are getting what they've always wanted, and the new audience members will feel like they are a part of the story rather than sitting there very confused because they weren't a part of this growing up. Now, the story should develop from there with different action points between these characters fighting people in battles, flashbacks to their interaction with each others in the past, and overall what it's leading and counting down to is the interaction in the final fight between King Piccolo and Goku. Now, I think that might be difficult to introduce because, again, there's a lot of history there, but I think it's possible. Again, you just need to introduce that this isn't just a tournament for them. While everybody else is watching a fun tournament, they're fighting not only because they enjoy it, but because there's something real at stake. And the flashbacks, I think, would help to give a real rich sense of what's going on. If you see King Piccolo battle somebody and pretty much almost kill them without any remorse, and then you get this flashback to this has happened before, and that when it happened before, the world was almost destroyed, then I think you have a chance to really see what is at stake here. Now, I know there's more to it. There's the battle between Piccolo and Goku, and I mean the Piccolo that we grow to love in Dragon Ball Z, but start with the King Piccolo tournament. And I think as you ramp up that film and you get near the end and your final climax between these two characters, that's where you have a chance to cut forward into an epilogue of the film, which shows Goku at this tournament. You get to see him interact with Piccolo, and you get a much fiercer battle to conclude, but then shows that this character Piccolo is not his father. And I think that's overall what the theme of this film should be. It's fathers and their sons. And this should be the film that carries through the entire series. Yes, the Dragon Balls are central. Yes, they're going to be a part of the story as you introduce them in flashbacks and where they stand today. And even as you were showing Goku and King Piccolo going at it head to head to put real stakes, it's that interaction between the characters leading up to this that's going to define them. Now, I know I'm condensing a whole lot, but I do think that the series should end, that final fight, at least between King Piccolo and Goku, should end with King Piccolo dying, him giving birth to an egg that we see hatch and ends up becoming Piccolo. And again, if we've introduced this world well enough to fans, that would be accepted. And then you cut forward to several years later, and that's where you see they're at the world's strongest again. Everybody looks relatively the same, but there's this new person, and it's the final battle, and that's what concludes this fight. And as they're fighting, that's where you see the smiles on Goku and Piccolo's faces, and you realize that this isn't a fight to the death like before. There's some fun, there's some camaraderie, there's a real challenge, but overall, there's something pure here, and they're fighting. Now, from there, I think that's where the movie should end. And that's where you would then get a sequel if the movie does well, and that would start off with Dragon Ball Z, and again, continue that theme of father and sons. The film should open up many years later, introducing you to Goku, introducing you to Chi-Chi and Gohan. Now, I think Chi-Chi could be introduced in the previous film. Again, you are going to have to play with the timeline a little bit in order to condense and make her a character that is a part of what's going on, another fighter who is also connected to Goku. But now she's a mother. Now there's Gohan, who's young, who has the 4-star Dragon Ball in his head, who is, new to you. But again, you're seeing this theme continue of father and sons. I think the movie could easily open up with you seeing these pictures on the wall that show the characters as they're changing and growing older, and introducing it. And as you're seeing Gohan as a baby, and then it's cutting forward until now you have him at a reasonable age. Goku is going today to speak to his friends who he hasn't seen in many years, and he's going to introduce them to Gohan, and I think that's what this movie should start out as. Now, as he's going to introduce to Gohan, this is where you see Raditz ship flying toward Earth. You get the feeling that there's something coming, but not sure what, and this is where within the first part of the film you were introduced to to Raditz, you have Goku and Piccolo meeting each other, fighting with each other, not fighting against each other, but fighting alongside each other to battle Raditz, and ultimately what that results in Goku's dying. And that's where, again, you're introduced to another part of the rich culture mythology created in the Dragon Ball Z verse when Goku's in heaven going to train with King Kai. Now, I think part of what this movie should do is introduce the viewers to this world. Uh, Recently, I saw Fantastic Beast, and I was very impressed with how they chose to introduce fans and new audience members to this world of strange but interesting creatures, and how the magic world works within America. And so that's what I think this film should try to do. It should try to introduce us to this world even further. There is an afterlife in this world. It's not treading on anything. But whereas it works its ways between heaven and hell and shows Goku in the afterlife battling, we also are introduced to the Saiyans and what they represent and how they're connected to Goku and the fact there's this much larger world out there with this bigger storyline that Goku is a central part of without even realizing it. And not just him, but his friends, the Z Warriors, as well. Now, I think another chunk of the movie could be dedicated simply to the Z Warriors getting ready, training, do a couple cool montages, but overall show Piccolo raising Gohan and doing it in the advent in preparation for the arrival of Vegeta and Nappa. When Vegeta and Nappa get there, which I think could take place about 45 minutes into the film, maybe that's too short. Maybe an hour into the film, maybe an hour and 15 minutes, you get some nice action scenes which will balance out the film until Goku arrives. And it should build up, so when Goku arrives, you get that battle between Vegeta and Goku. And I think a lot of the movie should be spent building up who Vegeta is in relation to Goku, who the Saiyans are, and really deepening their mythology, along with, again, adding to the history of the Z Warriors. And, of course, the relation father and son. Because Piccolo, in a lot of ways, he's not just Gohan's master, but he does take that fatherly role at one point in the series. So from here, the Dragon Balls are used to wish Goku back to life. He comes to fight Vegeta and Nappa. There's been some losses from the Z Warriors, which, if they've done the introduction right in the previous film, seeing them die will have an impact on the audience, especially if you cast actors that have some credibility. And I think overall, this last part of the film is going to be a fight between Goku and Vegeta. But if you do it right, and you don't try to rush through it, but you take your time and you fill in the background with flashbacks of these characters and how they interact in this other world and where Vegeta's coming from with Frieza, and I think introducing pieces of Frieza is a great time here. And then also where Goku's coming, when that battle is done and Goku lets Vegeta get back in his pod and fly away, you can end with the sense that this story is concluded, but there are also pieces of another story out there. And this is where I think, honestly, you could make a trilogy. Hopefully something more than a trilogy. But the next movie in the saga, of course, would be the introduction of Frieza and that battle. Again, there's a lot of history you're going to have to cut through and pick up the pieces that work together. But if you keep the themes that you need to keep alive, and you work to include some nice brief scenes, but important scenes, key scenes that are flashbacks or to these characters, I think you're going to build upon the mythology of this world. So that way, if things are moving quickly at certain points, it's going to be okay. Now, you're going to need directors that can do this. I mean, you can't go cheap with a director on a film like this. And the studios can't push for a certain ideal. They need a director with a good vision. They need actors that can carry forward these characters. And I gotta say, when it comes to fans too, there has to be an understanding that certain things may not work. And so they're going to have to cut things out of the storyline because time. But if they do it right, they look at some of these fan films that have been out there for inspiration. They look at technology and how it's progressed in terms of doing fighting scenes. Even the video games, I think, are a good inspiration because they have a way of showing these quick, fast punching movements while also keeping these characters centrally focused. I think they can do it. The biggest issue I see is you're going to have to create a set of rules for these films. You know, when you've read Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z, or you've watched the anime, or you watch the movies, you come to understand that there's rules at work here. These characters are not Supermen. They can be killed. Goku in one of the last films is shot with a laser beam. Strongest man in this world of this universe, and he's almost killed by a laser to the chest. And that's the thing, they're still vulnerable, and you need to capitalize on that vulnerability to create a sense of weakness. There's no point in having these awesome battles if there's nothing at stake. And I do think you can creep the big monkey transformations into the film. Would it be weird? Yes. But if you put it in the right flashback in the previous film, Dragon Ball, or somewhere in this film, it'll work. Don't make it the central big transformation like they did in the last live action Dragon Ball. It doesn't work. It comes off as silly. Though the makeup was really great for what they did with King Piccolo. I have to give them that. Now again, there's a lot of ideas I always throw out there, and making a reality is going to be difficult. But I think if studios want something that has the potential to make a lot of money, has a lot of history, also has a lot of merchandising connection, this is it. Back in the 90s and the early 2000s when Dragon Ball Z were big, I mean, there were toys everywhere selling out like hotcakes. There were models, there were posters, there were everything. It's one of the biggest mainstream animes that I'm aware of that, again, has gone mainstream. There's not a lot that's there. Fullmetal Alchemist, I would say, is probably a close second. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of great animes, but I mean anime shows that have gone mainstream, both in the United States and Japan, that people who aren't a fan of anime might also enjoy. There's not a ton that I'm aware of. And if I'm wrong, put it in the comments. I love to learn other people's views of anime, especially if there's something I haven't seen before and that I might watch. But Dragon Ball Z has a lot of potential because it has a lot of different fans from different places. People grew up watching it like they were watching the Saturday morning cartoons. I used to come home after school, not work, and watch it on Toonami, and that was my routine. So I know there is a base out there, and if you do it right, you can make money. All right, that's all I got for you. Hopefully this video will post correctly, but leave your comments in the comment section. Feel free to like or dislike this video if you like it, and thanks for watching.